Hi, my name is Bob Dunsmore. I have had the privilege of meeting personally with a top U.S. climate scientist who wrote a book called Solving the Climate Crisis. I'm going to show you a picture of John Berger. It was a privilege to visit with him in San Francisco. I have learned that U.S. policy to reduce emissions in order to cool the earth is a complete failure. I'll try to be real brief, but this is a message I need to get out to the world because I have grandchildren and I really want to survive and not to move into an extinction tilting point within 3 or 4 or 5 years. The scientists are always making that a shorter window. Why? Because the whole idea of a tipping point is really false. There are all kinds of tipping points that have already occurred with the tundra, with the oceans, with the coral reefs, with the rainforest. It's not just one tipping point. All of these are contributing to a collapse, which will be irreversible within just a few years. And U.S. policy now to reduce emissions is actually creating an enormous amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, building EVs and EV batteries and windmills and solar panels, which are all good things, but not to solve the global warming issue in time. There's no way. It's aggravating the problem, as we all know. Carbon dioxide continues to increase despite all the efforts around the world, especially in China right now with renewable energy. What is needed, according to John Berger, is, and I'm going to read to you a little bit about this gentleman in just a second, but what is needed is drawdown of carbon dioxide. I have made a video on YouTube that's called Good News with an exclamation point. Climate Crisis Solution. There it is right there. That video focuses on the solution, the only solution according to John Berger, for avoiding the tipping point into extinction. Now this one I am going to entitle Good News, also with an exclamation point. Why carbon drawdown only solution? Only solution, according to John Berger. He's an environmental science and policy specialist, prize-winning author, a journalist, a graduate of Stanford University and the University of California. Berger has written for Scientific American, HuffPost, the Los Angeles Times, the Boston Globe, the Christian Science Monitor, and USA Today magazine. He has been a consultant to the National Research Council of the National Academy of Sciences and the U.S. Congress, and I can go on and on. But what he has said on page 229 of his book, what if there were a way to safely pull billions of tons of carbon out of the atmosphere to substantially reduce or even eliminate global warming? What if this approach costs relatively little and could be used around the world? What if it also put billions of dollars in cash into the hands of countless working Americans and people worldwide? What if it even slashed fossil fuel consumption and made the world more resilient to climate stress? Well, it turns out that there is a system that can do all of that. It's called carbon farming. And it just might be the key to restabilizing the climate. In the process, it can revitalize rural economies while also producing healthier, more nutritious crops, and amazingly, it is low cost, low tech, and low risk. Carbon farming involves not only recreating the soil so that the soil, the microbes, can draw down carbon and put it into the tissue of plants, which then draw down more carbon, and reforestation, which will then allow for those machines, the trees, to draw down carbon and put it into the ground through the root system of every tree, into the fungal mycelium under the tree, so to store the carbon there for thousands of years. Reforestation, however, is very difficult to accomplish without providing an alternative to cooking fuel. For 2 billion people that use wood and cut down trees every day to cook. And cooking fuel, in my opinion, is the most essential fuel in the world for feeding your families. And yet it is the only fuel that is not subsidized. Doesn't make that much money for corporations to subsidize cooking fuel. And there's an elegant way to provide cooking fuel by compressing into like a carbon log agricultural waste, sawdust, rice chaff, coffee pulp, and bagasse, which is the sawdust that comes from making sugarcane. All of that can provide wonderful cooking fuel, and also it is carbon neutral. In fact, it might be considered carbon positive because it preserves the trees and communities. I've worked in 20 countries, and in many of those communities around the world have said that if they could have cooking fuel provided, they would reforest around their communities. They would have planting beds and grow trees, saplings, and get them out there and actually do the reforesting needed to draw down carbon dioxide. And then there are all kinds of solutions for drawing down carbon into the oceans and rivers and lakes. But if we only regenerated soil from all the dead soil around the world that has been killed by agricultural chemicals, if we just did a small percentage of that regenerating the soil, we could reverse climate change. I believe, from what I have researched, we could see a change within 2 or 3 years of implementation of such a policy. And the reason why I am so passionate about getting this word out right now is because soon we will have a climate denier, possibly, as President of the United States. And we could have the Biden administration implement this policy, begin the process of regenerating soil with the help of the government to bring small farmers back to their lands where they have actually been exiled. The land has been confiscated by the great agribusiness corporations. It would end the immigration crisis, according to NPR. It would create locally based agriculture, which has proven to stabilize communities around the world wherever it's been tried. Healthier food, healthier communities. Millions of jobs will be created overnight because organic agriculture, mandated organic agriculture, requires hands-on work. It cannot be done with huge chemical spraying machines and all of that. It has to be done with workers. Millions of workers are going to be needed overnight in order to transition the United States to an organic, regenerative agriculture. And I could go on, but please write me at the heartmindalliance.com or at our email address, heartmindalliance@gmail.com to help me get this word out. I pass this video on. Let's get the attention of someone in government that could bring this about and create a regenerative future for our planet. I have 3 grandchildren, and on their behalf, I speak these words to you and hope that we can get this word out in time in order to keep the planet from sliding into a irreversible collapse and the end of many more species than are now dying daily. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.